You've been lied to. You were told that 1929 was a speculative bubble. You were told 2008 was a failure of bank regulation. You were told that with new rules, a too-big-to-fail collapse could never happen again. This is the greatest illusion ever sold. The crashes aren't accidents. They are a feature. They are a repeating, four-stage pattern, a scheduled demolition that allows the same elite insiders to harvest the world's wealth. While you are told to buy and hold, they are preparing for a controlled burn. This pattern is playing out again, right now. The same forces that triggered the Great Depression and the Great Financial Crisis are coiled, hidden in plain sight, ready to strike. The inflation you feel, the impossible price of housing, the debt you can't escape. This is the pressure building. This is the manufactured instability. They are in stage 3. You are being positioned as the exit liquidity. If you're watching this, you feel that something is deeply wrong with the system. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from. We are a global community of thinkers who see the cracks in the wall. If you want the unfiltered truth about how this system really works, subscribe to this channel right now. We are going to connect the dots the establishment media refuses to touch. The pattern is always the same. It just wears a different mask. In the 1920s, the mask was margin. Ordinary people were sold a dream. Buy stocks with 10% down. The market became a one-way bet, fueled by unprecedented leverage. The insiders, the stock pools of the era, men like Joseph Kennedy, rode the wave up. They used the public's frenzy to inflate their own holdings. But here's the part they leave out of the textbooks. The 1920s bubble wasn't just irrational exuberance. It was fueled by the Federal Reserve itself, which, under Benjamin Strong, kept interest rates artificially low throughout the mid-1920s. Why? To help Great Britain and Europe recover from World War I by making it cheaper to borrow dollars. They knew it was inflating a dangerous domestic bubble. They chose to sacrifice the American public for geopolitical goals. The crash was an engineered demolition. While the shoeshine boys were giving stock tips, Kennedy and the other elites began stage 1, the quiet exit. They sold their massively inflated stocks to the public, converting their paper gains into hard cash and gold. When the market finally collapsed in October 1929, the public was wiped out. Margin calls triggered a cascade of forced selling, revealing the system had no real foundation. It was a house of cards. The elites, holding all the cash, then executed stage 4. They returned to buy the entire country, railroads, banks, and industries, for pennies on the dollar. Sound familiar? Fast forward to the 2000s. The mask had a new name: subprime mortgages. The dream was the same. Everyone gets a house, a piece of the American dream. But it was a trap. They blamed greedy lenders. They blamed stupid borrowers. They never blamed the source. Alan Greenspan, the maestro. His Federal Reserve kept interest rates at an insane 1% for years after the dot-com bust, forcing an entire generation, pension funds, retirees, moms and pops, to chase risk and yield they couldn't afford. Greenspan created the Greenspan put, an implicit promise that the Fed would always bail out the market. It wasn't a failure of regulation. It was a policy of parasitic finance. Wall Street, in its infinite greed, took these toxic loans, these ticking time bombs, and packaged them into complex new weapons called mortgage-backed securities, MBS, and collateralized debt obligations, CDOs. They sold these weapons as AAA-rated, the safest investments in the world, to pension funds, to cities, to entire countries. They built a new house of cards, this time so large it threatened the entire globe. But just like in 1929, the insiders knew the truth. Michael Burry, John Paulson, they weren't geniuses. They just bothered to read the fine print. They saw the leverage was built on a lie, and they began their four-stage pattern. While the Federal Reserve Chairman, Ben Bernanke, was saying subprime was contained in March 2007, they were in stage 2, buying insurance. They purchased billions in credit default swaps, a direct bet that the system would fail. When it all came crashing down in 2008, the public was again wiped out. Their homes, their pensions, their jobs, gone. But the insiders who bought the insurance walked away with billions. And the very banks that caused the crisis? They weren't jailed. They were given trillions of your tax dollars in the largest wealth transfer in human history. They were too big to fail. Sound familiar? This brings us to today. You are being told the economy is resilient. that stocks only go up, that the system is safer than ever. But the insiders are exiting. Warren Buffett is sitting on a record $189 billion in cash. Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jamie Dimon are all dumping their own company stock at a pace not seen since right before the 2008 crash. This is stage one. They are selling their illusion to you. You are being told that 1929 was about margin debt and 2008 was about housing debt. This is a distraction. The debt was just the trigger. The real mechanism, the real conspiracy, is the hidden machine that creates the leverage in the first place. It's a machine that is bigger, faster, and more hidden than ever before. It's a parasitic system that has already secretly captured the global economy. The debt in 1929 and 2008 was visible. You could see it on the balance sheets. The problem today is a multi-trillion-dollar phantom, a ghost in the machine. What if I told you there is a second US dollar, a shadow dollar, created offshore, beyond the control of any government, beyond the reach of any regulator? An ocean of phantom money that funds the entire global economy and is now the source of the greatest leverage bubble in human history? What if I told you the 2008 crash was just a tremor and this shadow system is the real earthquake? The elites who run this system have already begun their countdown. They are positioning for the final wealth transfer. And the name of this mechanism? You won't believe the name. It's a ghost that's been hiding for 70 years. This is the deep dive. This is what they pray you never understand. The mechanism is not the Federal Reserve. The mechanism is the Eurodollar system. Forget everything you think you know about money. The Eurodollar system is the real global monetary system. It's not the dollar in your pocket. A Eurodollar is any US dollar held in a bank outside the United States. It started in the 1950s with Soviet banks in Paris, hence Euro, that didn't want their dollar deposits seized by the US. So, they kept them in Europe. But this created a monster. These offshore dollars were not subject to any US banking regulations. No reserve requirements. No FDIC insurance. Nothing. A bank in London or Tokyo could take in one real dollar deposit and lend out 10, 20, or 50 phantom dollars against it, creating them from thin air. This is the shadow banking system. It is a $100 trillion, or more, no one knows, ungoverned, unregulated ocean of pure, digital leverage. It is the parasitic twin of the real economy. It's the money that funds 90% of international trade and corporate debt. And here is the secret. This system has no anchor. It has no lender of last resort. It is pure, concentrated, moral hazard. It is the leverage. Think of it this way. Your local bank is forced by law to hold a certain amount of your money in reserve. It's a flimsy protection. The Eurodollar system has no reserve requirements. None. It is a system of 100% rehypothecation. A bank in the Cayman Islands can take a $1 deposit and lend it out, and that bank can lend it out, and so on, creating a chain of phantom claims, a money multiplier on steroids. This isn't banking. It's a global, digital game of musical chairs with $1.50 quadrillion in derivatives resting on top of it. And the music is about to stop. When this shadow system prints, the global economy booms. Asset prices, stocks, crypto, real estate, everything inflates. When it contracts, the world breaks. This shadow system is exactly what broke in 2008. It wasn't just subprime. It was a silent run on the Eurodollar system. These shadow banks, like Lehman Brothers, were all borrowing short-term shadow dollars to fund long-term toxic assets, like MBS. When the shadow lenders got scared, they stopped lending. The music stopped. The entire $100 trillion system froze solid in an afternoon. That's why the Fed had to panic. The bailouts weren't just for US banks. The Fed opened central bank liquidity swaps, giving trillions in secret, backdoor bailouts to European and Japanese banks, just to keep the shadow system from imploding and taking the entire planet with it. They didn't fix the problem. They just hit the reset button. They papered over the black hole. And they made the problem worse. Today, the leverage is no longer in visible things like mortgages. The elites learned their lesson. The leverage is now fully hidden, off balance sheet, in a derivative so complex and so dark, it makes a CDO look like a savings bond. It's called the total return swap. This is stage 3 of the elite plan. A total return swap, TRS, is a gentleman's agreement between a shadow bank, like a hedge fund, and a prime broker, like a major investment bank. Here's the con. The hedge fund, let's call it Archegos, wants to buy $10 billion worth of a stock, but they only have $1 billion. In the old days, they'd borrow $9 billion on margin, and that debt would be visible on their books. With a total return swap, the bank buys the $10 billion in stock. The bank holds it on its own books. But the hedge fund, in a secret side contract, agrees to take all the profits, the total return, from that stock. In exchange, they pay the bank a small fee. Do you see the illusion? The hedge fund gets $10 billion of exposure with only $1 billion of capital. That's 10-to-1 leverage. But on their balance sheet, nothing. No debt. No stock. Just a simple fee. The regulators see nothing. The public sees nothing. This is how the hedge fund Archegos Capital, run by a man named Bill Huang, secretly amassed over $100 billion in exposure using only a fraction of that in capital. He was the single largest investor in multiple companies, and nobody knew. And who gave him the matches? Who built this shadow pyramid for him? The same names you're supposed to trust. Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, UBS, Nomura, and, most importantly, Credit Suisse. They all knew the game. They were all fighting to give Huang more leverage, collecting massive fees, knowing that someone else would be left holding the bag. When the music stopped, the banks that were slowest to the exit, Credit Suisse, were vaporized. Archegos wasn't just a hedge fund failure. It was the event that killed a 167-year-old global bank. It proved the swaps are big enough to kill the gods of finance. And that was just one fund. In March 2021, one of his stocks wobbled. The banks that built this house of cards for him panicked. They triggered a margin call. But Huang had no real money. The banks were forced to liquidate his entire $100 billion portfolio in a 2-day fire sale. It was the fastest, most violent collapse of a single investor in history. It vaporized $35 billion in market value. This was the warning shot. This was the preview. Archegos wasn't a rogue trader. Archegos was the system. Right now, there are thousands of these ticking time bombs. The entire shadow banking system, hedge funds, private equity, family offices, is saturated with this hidden leverage. This is the parasitic finance that has inflated the everything bubble since 2008. And here is the $1.50 quadrillion question. What happens when the next thing wobbles? What happens when the commercial real estate market, which is already in a 1929-style collapse, triggers the real margin call? And that block is commercial real estate. You see, the $100 billion from Archegos was in stocks. The real hidden leverage, the trillion-dollar time bomb, is in CRE. Hundreds of billions in office tower loans are coming due in 2025 and 2026. They were financed at 2% interest. They must now be refinanced at 8%. The buildings are 40% empty. The math is broken. This isn't a downturn. It's a 100% failure. And who holds these doomed loans? The regional banks. The same banks that are also the prime brokers for other, smaller Huangs. When these banks go bust, and they will, it will trigger a chain reaction of margin calls across the entire shadow swap market. It's 2008, but this time, the subprime is commercial, and the CDOs are total return swaps. It won't be one fund. It will be all of them, at once. The 4-stage crash is repeating. Stage 1. The insiders, Bezos, Buffett, are exiting. They are selling their inflated paper to you and hoarding cash. Stage 2. The smart money is buying insurance. But they aren't just buying puts. They are buying tail risk derivatives that pay 1,000 to 1 when the shadow system freezes. Stage 3. This is the active short. They are targeting the linchpins. They are shorting the regional banks that are drowning in bad commercial real estate loans. They know these banks are the prime brokers for other, smaller shadow players. They are not just betting on a collapse. They are positioning to profit from the cascade. They are pulling the Jenga block. Stage 4. This is the goal. When the total return swaps unwind, when the Eurodollar system freezes, and the Fed is forced to admit that the entire system is an insolvent illusion, they will unleash a panic worse than 1929 and 2008 combined. This is the engineered collapse. This is when your 401k, your home equity, your currency, all vaporize. And that's when the elites, sitting on their mountains of cash from stage 1, will step in. They will buy the real assets, the foreclosed properties, the bankrupted corporations, the critical infrastructure, for 1 cent on the dollar. This is the Great Reset, not the one they talk about on TV. The real one, the one that has happened twice before. The greatest transfer of wealth in the history of the world. This isn't a prediction. It's a spoiler. The pattern is locked in. So what is the final lesson? The stakes are no longer just your portfolio. The stakes are everything. The modern system is built on a lie, wrapped in an illusion. It is a system of borrowed time. The elites and the central banks didn't fix the 2008 crisis. They just transferred the leverage from the public banks to the shadow banks, where it could grow in the dark, unseen, and cancerous. They have engineered a system that must collapse to survive. It is a parasitic organism that must periodically shed its skin, and that skin is your savings. Denial is the most powerful human drug. It's easier to believe the official narrative. It's comforting to think the people in charge are wise, that the system is stable, and that 1929 was a black and white photo from a bygone era. Your greatest enemy isn't the federal. It's your own normalcy bias. The deep-seated belief that tomorrow will be like today, that the shelves will always be full, that your digital money will always be yours. This bias is the cage they have built for you. It keeps you invested. It keeps you compliant. It keeps you from preparing. But the machine is global now. The leverage is instantaneous. The coming crash will not be a slow burn like the 1930s. It will be an everything, everywhere, all at once event. A digital bank run that will happen in hours, not days. And do not be fooled by their solution. Because when the dust settles, when the panic is at its peak, they will offer a new system. A safer, more stable system. It will be a central bank digital currency, CBDC. It will be sold to you as protection. It is not. It is the final stage prison. Money with an expiration date. Money that can be programmed to stop you from buying what they don't want you to buy. Money that can be turned off. They are engineering the crisis to force you to accept the cage. This isn't just a wealth transfer. It is the end game for economic freedom. You have a choice. You can be the shoeshine boy from 1929, buying at the top, full of hope and ignorance. Or you can be the insider who sees the 4 stages for what they are, a blueprint for the greatest heist ever perpetrated. Prepare yourself. Build your own reserves. Get out of their system of paper and illusion and into real assets. Question everything they tell you. This is your final warning. I want you to share this video, not for me, but for the people you know who are still asleep. And in the comments, tell me what you see. What part of this parasitic system are you most skeptical of? Subscribe for the truth, because the illusion is shattering. The clock on this borrowed time is running out.